Welcome to our compliance event. This compliance event is hosted by Prembly and Africa Technology Radio. I'm Anthony. I am the co-host for today's compliance event. I lead the team at Africa Tech Radio. I host a podcast and a radio show that focuses on happenings, opportunities, challenges in business, education, governance, and emerging areas of tech in Africa. Welcome, everyone. And our host today, Chidinma Agusiegbe. She's a governance, risk, and compliance expert with a proven track record in corporate governance, risk management, regulatory compliance, and policy development across the financial services industry. And she currently is the head of governance, risk, and compliance at Sabi.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And it is indeed my pleasure to be on this platform with you all to talk about that very important topic, which is compliance. Some years ago, compliance didn't seem like something that will catch on with the financial institutions, especially in this part of the world, where compliance was seen as a cost center, as against being seen as business partners, business enablers. But I am so happy to see how we have grown in this area, this business area. And, I'm so happy to see financial institutions now embracing compliance, not as a cost center any longer, but as a business partner, a business enabler, and also as an advisor to help navigate the regulatory space. I will start off by asking a question to Ikenna. So, considering that you are the head of compliance at MoneyPoint, how would you say you've been able to foster a culture of compliance as well as cybersecurity across all levels of your workforce?
So thanks, Chidinma. I'm happy with the way you introduced it. I mean, compliance was always seen as the police of the company, chasing around people to get them to do the right thing. However, that has changed. As you said, we are now business partners, and that is rightfully so. Based on our experience, our understanding, and our interpretation of regulation, what we do now is mainly advisory, right? And we try and direct the company to achieve its goals while going through the regulatory hoops. Basically, to get to your destination or your objective without having any penalties or breaches of regulation. So basically, before I joined the company I'm in now, MoneyPoint, I think there was a gap in what compliance was and how important it was in allowing the company to achieve its objectives. So one of the key things that the group CEO did was in his first opening statement for the year, which was basically sustained growth and compliance. That was his message. So basically the key thing that we did was set that tone from the top, right? It was not just by saying it, there were now policies put in place. They employed me as the chief compliance officer. They made clear communications and policies around compliance, guiding each product, functional leaders, and business leaders, right? So they also promoted the speak up culture. When I mean speak up culture, it was more on open office. Please, if you have any issues, everyone is learning. It was more open. It was more of a standard kind of office where it was allowed and you were not beaten up for raising your hand or saying things that you're not sure of. Open office, pick up, and then foster collaborations between the compliance and other teams like the IT, like the business unit, the product teams. Ensure that we now do what employ the compliance business partners. This is basically because we understood that many of the products were to launch into the market. By the time it reached the regulatory desk, they were being rejected because they did not meet major regulatory requirements. So it was important that the compliance business partners sat at the onset with the businesses and the product leaders, that when they were actually making these products, at each point, the compliance person and the rest of the assurance functions, the risk, the internal control, were all together in the right to make sure these policies were actually produced. So by the time we got to the regulatory desk, it was smooth sailing. Another thing that we did to ensure compliance was also trainings, right? That cannot be overemphasized, training. I mean, you don't expect them to do something if they don't know it. And the trainings are not just written or tests. It could come in different forms. It could be quizzes. It could be just mails giving them snippets. It could be refreshers. And then you can now have the mandatory assessments that the staff are meant to basically take, and you require them to have basically an 80% pass mark. This just to make sure that the compliance message is enshrined in their brain in whatever they do. And compliance is not just in your operations, what you do in the office, it also has to do with what you do outside, because you also represent the institution. So you have to comply both at work and both in your family life. I think one of the other ones was when we're also doing these trainings, we tried our best to localize it to things that are actually within our space, within the fintech space, within the banking space, within Nigeria. We are not just throwing out the trainings on compliance based on things happening internationally. We are talking about things, real life things that have happened within Nigeria, and how compliance breaches have let the company not achieve achieve its objectives. And then finally, I think we now close it out by having the recognition and incentive package. So where people come out and actually be proactive in their compliance attributes, and are the ones actually showing or leading the roles wherever they may be, whether business leaders or just team members, and showing that compliance rules or qualities. Then we compensate them either by promotions, financial, or giving them kinds. So I think those are the kind of things we've done within MoneyPoint to foster compliance.
Just from a consultancy perspective, I think first I'd like to say it's really commendable what Ikenna and the organization have done, because majority of the items is mentioned are indeed the items or the things that a company that fosters compliance is keen on. The only thing that I would probably advise from a consultancy perspective, and even from an experiential perspective, they would probably engage an organization like us who are keen on doing verification on the documents that the clients provide. Say in a very specific case in Kenya, we've seen a current trend in Kenya where the financial institutions are engaging companies like us who are in the data infrastructure compliance industry to verify or authenticate documents that their clients provide. For example, to take a loan. So if an organization, for example, wants to take a loan, and you're claiming you're a business based in that country, we are given that document to be able to confirm that indeed that company is a legit company, number one, and they have legitimacy in the country, and they have the proper documentation to be able to transact business in the country. From an advisory or consultancy perspective, engage a data infrastructure company that can be able to assist you with the compliance.
Thank you so much, Christine. And Ikenna, I loved it so much when you spoke about the assurance teams, right? So what that tells me is that in your organization, there's a collaboration between all of the assurance functions to ensure that every facet of the organization understands their responsibility to compliance. I absolutely love it. You know, a time was when we used to speak about maturity in compliance, and one of those criteria to show you are a matured organization when it comes to compliance is the ability to pull in the other assurance functions to drive that compliance culture. So well done to you. And thank you so much for your response, Christine. So when we talk about challenges that financial institutions face, and this question is to you again, Ikenna, how or what would you say are the biggest challenges that organizations face, especially in maintaining that regulatory compliance amidst the rising cyber threats that they encounter?
Okay. Thank you again, Chidinma. So as you said, I mean, I can count about 5 or 6 cyber threats that have occurred, cyber attacks, actual cyber attacks, where some financial institutions have actually been infiltrated, right? I mean, the rapid way these bad actors have actually increased their attacks. And we used to think this was the kind of attacks that will happen outside Nigeria, maybe Europe or Asia or more advanced regions. However, they are here with us. And I mean, this, even when companies are adapting and trying to catch up, basically, we've been trying to do catch up because you do your vulnerability test, you actually find out the issues you have, you try and close those gaps, then the threats are rapidly coming and they're coming with new ones. I mean, that's basically what we are seeing now. What has happened is that while we've tried to also on our own do the test ourselves, try to identify our vulnerabilities, we've realized that regulation has also been coming, because by the time the regulators have seen that a lot of cyber attacks have happened, they will immediately bring out a regulation. So sometime in May this year, the CBN released the risk-based cyber framework on guidelines for deposit money banks and payment service banks, right? So what he outlined were a group of requirements which we had to have as a fintech company and as a payment service bank. Some of the requirements were the cyber security governance and oversight. It required that we now create a new info security committee. It required that we now increase the assessments. It required that we did resilience assessments, did operational resilience checks, and also intelligence and other intelligence and security metrics done, as well as the monitoring and reporting. Now, when we received this regulation, we had to first now do a gap analysis of what we had within MoneyPoint. And what we realized that were things like the IT security committee, we had to immediately establish that. The cyber security operational resilience, we had to immediately execute that. And we also did an assessment. And we are also currently consulting an external person to also help us to audit this assessment we've done. So those are the kind of things we've done to try and catch up. But as you know, we always try to keep our ears on the ground to basically try and see the next kind of trending fraud that is going on, and not just within Nigeria, but outside the shores. And the only way to do this is not just the compliance person, it's also by doing trainings, letting the entire company know what is actually going on, the exposures we have, training them on things like what phishing is all about, how they can be vulnerable, and basically be the roots or the medium through which the company could be infiltrated, right? But another key challenge we have is the resources. So by the time you have all this, you know all the issues that you have, you know your vulnerabilities, but what resources do you have to actually challenge or mitigate this kind of risks, right? We have the issues of human resources, people, as you said, a lot of people with the right expertise have left the country, and it also speaks about the costs. Right, to get these applications in place, they cost a lot to make sure you have your systems or applications that run and be proactive and be robust enough to be able to deflect any.
Even though you said you are playing catch up, I think that's you being proactive, really, making sure that those cyber threats don't, negatively impact your businesses. And you seem to be on top of it, right? When you're talking about the assessment, the gap analysis that you carry out so that you can identify those areas that you need to pay more attention to and plug those, gaps that would enable you, your organization function with minimal risk to cyber threats. So well done. Okay.
Thank you.
With respect to how our financial institutions are structured and the height in the frauds that we have experienced, how would you say businesses have been affected in the recent times?
Okay. So for instance, some of our key customers within MoneyPoint these are POS agents, right? Those are the ones that stand by the roadside with the machines and help you with the transfer of funds or receive money or give out money to you, right? So in the recent times, there has been an increase in what we now call identity theft or just WhatsApp takeovers. So what has happened is that when these guys do the WhatsApp takeover, they quickly reach out to your direct relatives or your close friends and request for funds. Now, when they request for those funds, you will now realize that they put in an account number. Unfortunately, the account number they are putting in to receive funds from those your close relatives is the account number of POS agents. So those POS agents are innocently standing by the roadside, And this fraudster goes to meet the POS agent. Please, I'm expecting, so this is just a practical example. I'm expecting, say, 50,000, 100,000 naira from my relative. Please, can I use your account number so you can send it to you and you give me cash? Now, the innocent POS agent thinks this is a genuine transaction, right? Chooses out his or her account number. The bad actor has already gone to the WhatsApp he has taken over, keeps now keys in the account number of the POS agent. If anybody falls for that, for his tricks, they transfer money into that POS agent's account number. The POS agent confirms receipt will be 50k, 400,000 naira, and now proceeds to give it to the bad actor that has used her account. Then what happens? Later, when the person now gets back they probably gets the identity back, retrieve the WhatsApp, they now report the issue to the police. The police go around, find out the account number that received the funds, and then what do the police do? The police go immediately and pick up the innocent POS agent. And the POS agent is like, I was just used to receive funds. I'm not part of this. I was not the one that did the fraud. I was just receiving funds and giving to this customer. So we've had a lot of these issues where the police have come, picked up our agents, and they are just money point POS agents. They are not the real fraudsters. That has really diminished business for them. It's been quite risky because a lot of them have been locked up. Because while the police have to do their investigation, some of them are locked up. Some of them who are lucky just immediately refund and just not to enter the police net. However, on our own part, we've actually identified this risk by putting some kind of control, wherein we've asked the POS agents, please, if you're going to do this kind of receipt of monies where you have to receive money on behalf of someone, you are required for amounts above 200,000 naira to request for at least an ID, a photo ID, or any correct identifier, a driver's license, national ID, for whoever you're going to be giving such monies to. That is how we've tried to control this, but it's still rampant, at least for the ones that are doing this fraud for less than 200,000 naira. We still have cases like that existing. But it has seriously affected the POS business. But we are just trying to let them know to be more careful to who they actually allow to do that kind of transaction, for people that are not actually coming with their own cards to actually transactions on their POS.
I mean, it's amazing to hear that MoneyPoint has indeed identified this risk and is already taking steps towards mitigating it. I mean, on LinkedIn the other day, there was this news about a poor POS lady who was inadvertently used to receive monies from kidnappers. And she didn't know. She was just doing her business, and she had to, the person comes and asks for the money, and she withdrew the money and gave the person. But because, the way our financial businesses are structured now, there's traceability. They were able to trace that the monies went to her and she withdrew it and gave it to so and so person. And she was picked up. Unfortunately, she's going to pay for being a part of, a situation that she knew nothing about. But I'm also happy to hear that MoneyPoint is taking that front row in making sure that risks like this are being mitigated, that people who want to do the POS business with MoneyPoint are getting the necessary training and information to help protect their business and, of course, protect MoneyPoint in the long run. So well done, sir. Well done. So when it comes to our ever-changing regulatory environment, we know that in a country like Nigeria, the regulators just, they use us a lot to test certain policies, even though from where how I work, I know that those policies are usually targeted towards mitigating certain risks that have already been identified. But for you as the head of compliance at MoneyPoint, how do you, ensure implementation of regulatory requirements, the new regulatory requirements that have been pushed out by the regulators?
Do as a company. So for all the different departments, we have the requirements governing them. For instance, for finance, we have the issues on guide to bank charges. We have different policies on what the financial ratios should be maintained within the bank is. So when we have a new policy or a regulation, the first thing we do is check with our rule book and see whether it's something that's originally captured. Then we now actually bring it up to do the gap analysis. We identify if it's originally captured. We now bring out the new or the amendments or the changes in the new policies, and we then do the analysis. What we're analyzing for is, number one, what are the things that are new? What are the things that have changed? And then what are our risk exposures from the controls we originally have? So when we identify that whatever controls we had from the changes are not applicable or need amendments, then we can go and meet with the required units or department in charge of it and create the procedures as well with the other assurance functions, internal control, risk, to make sure that these new requirements are met. And it has to be on a timely basis. There has to be responsibilities assigned to each individual, so everybody knows their role in achieving this. It's not just compliance doing it. It has to do with compliance. It has to do with the senior management. It has to do with the entire the board as well, because they'll be the ones in charge of actually making sure we comply with these regulations. So by the time we do the gap analysis and we've identified the risks, we've identified how to mitigate them, then there could be issues of costs, or whether there are some requirements of resources to meet this regulation. There could be requirements of having to put in more money or bringing in external people to review what we've done. So that is what we as compliance will now present to the board or senior management to say, look at the gap analysis. We have met 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, to meet up with 4, 5, and 6, we require more funds, we require more people, we require more apps, we require more time to achieve this. And then again, even when these regulations come, it is important that we have that relationship with the regulator. So in a case where they have put a deadline for us to meet with this regulation, it's important we can get the feedback and say, look, we are trying to meet it. Please, could you extend it for a month? Could you extend it for 2 weeks? Please, this is our setback in this space. It's very important to have that key and open relationship with your regulator, so they are able to be more welcoming when you come up with these things. And not only for that issue, also it's important even before they will bring out the regulation. Sometimes the regulators, what they do is they bounce it off you. They send out a draft.
Yeah.
So when we are having this when they are sending out the draft, it's important that we have this interaction. So when you're relating with your regulator, you are being very, very proactive. And being proactive, I mean here, is suggesting things, because sometimes you realize you know more of what is going on in the industry more than the regulator. So when a regulator is trying to bring out a regulation, you can even be the one advising the regulator on how best to implement this. So when you're having those collaborations, if you're proactive, then if you're thinking ahead, you'll be the one that the regulator will be coming to meet and say, okay, look at this, look at what we're having here, look at the entire industry, we're having these issues within fraud. Please give us your advice. Let's bring it in. How are we going to make it better for everyone within the environment? And you find out once you have that two-way relationship, and not just between you and yourself and the regulator, you could also apply with everyone within that ecosystem, right? Once you have that relationship, then you can see that it shouldn't be much of an issue when you probably have delays or you're unable to reach the deadlines advised for that regulation. But it can also create more of an environment for the regulator to probably now either not be too strict in implementing some things that could possibly harm business, and also definitely allow businesses to grow. So we don't want a case where regulation just comes out and we immediately just start complying. It's always important that we try to find a balance between the regulation and allowing businesses to thrive. Thank you.
With respect to our ever-changing regulatory environment, how would you, from a consulting perspective, support organizations like MoneyPoint meet up with these regulatory requirements and stay on top of their responsibility to the regulators?
Among the things that we can do, or we are currently even doing, we provide that infrastructure to be able to comply. What do I mean by the infrastructure? I mean, we have the technology and the tools, the data to be able to check whether these are organizations that you're dealing with, companies or even individuals, whether they have complied with that data. Because we are in the compliance industry, we can be able to support in terms of keeping your employees informed, the advice, or even to an extent provide some sort of training just to give them or even support them and tell them this is what you need to look out for. So
yes, absolutely. You know, one of the biggest challenges many compliance officers face is that infrastructure to articulate the regulatory requirements. And it's so good to hear that you can provide support in that regard and help many compliance officers, ensure that they continue to stay on top of their responsibilities to their organizations. And Mr. Ikenna, I really like the fact that you mentioned that key role of a compliance officer, where you continue to act as a liaison between your organization and the regulators. That is so important. And I think that responsibility is even more important than the actual work that the compliance officers do, because if you are not constantly engaging these regulators, you won't understand where they are coming from with respect to the regulations, and you will also not understand how best to articulate compliance with those regulations. So that constant engagement with the regulators is really, really key as part of the role of a compliance officer. So thank you so much for your responses so far. My next question is directed to you, Christine, and it has to do with emerging technologies. And as a consultant, how would you support compliance officers in their role and their responsibility? How would you support them in the area of technology? What are those key technologies you would advise that they can onboard to help in the delivery of their responsibilities as compliance officers?
Emerging technologies. I mean, the technology is consistently and continuously evolving. So among the recommendations from a consultancy perspective that I give will be use of automated compliance and monitoring. Since we are able to use tools like, for example, AI, we can be able to automate the compliance perspective, the technologies there currently. We can be able to provide that technology. And the other thing is, of course, continuous training for staff and awareness. In this case, Ikenna could be aware of the current trends or the current regulations that exist. But you could find that maybe his juniors or the employees in his organizations, they don't have that awareness or they don't have that knowledge. So that continuous training and continuous giving awareness, it doesn't need to be a training. It could be in the form of like a blog post you're posting and just letting your team members know that this is the actual trends that are going on, and they need to be aware and they need to be out.
Thank you so much for that response. Ikenna, so for Money Point now, I know that, in fact, from all we have been saying so far, you guys are very forward thinking. So when it comes to tools like AI, machine learning, how much of a role would you say they play in the regulatory compliance space, especially with respect to supporting you combat fraud in your institution?
Okay, thanks, Chidinma. These AI-powered tools, they are very important right now because they not only come from just transaction monitoring, as Christine said, also regulatory compliance from even onboarding the customer. It streamlines the entire process of KYC for us, right? From the data collection, from the verification, and then data management. It makes it much easier for us. It's cost effective, and it uses less time, right? It also helps us with risk assessment when we even onboard the customer. So by the time we collect the data, analyze the data, it helps us to do risk assessment and helps us to better identify whoever we have onboarded. Basically verify who they say they are. And that's on one point. So once they've come into the system, after going through all this, we have their data. Then again, for the fraud detection. Now, AI and machine learning have come in such a way that they're able to use their algorithms to analyze vast amounts of transactions, because in Money Point, we do about 26 million transactions in a day. So we use this AI to basically analyze these transactions, be able to do predictive analytics and also do a link analysis of these transactions to make sure we're able to spot the correct suspicious transactions, right? So those transactions, this AI basically helps us reduce the amount of false positives we have, because it analyzes not just the transaction, but it also brings into perspective other things like the behaviors of the customer. It brings in things like the patterns of the customer. So it's not just a transaction, it brings in other things that the AI and the machine has learned from the customer, both from onboarding his KYC details and then his transactions. I mean, it also helps us in reporting. Another issue we had was how we do the reporting to our regulators. So once everything is streamlined in such a way, you have the data, you've done the analysis, you've done the transaction monitoring, it now relates to how you report your CTR, that the currency transaction reporting, the FTR and STR to the regulators, and in this case, the NFI on the GoML portal. So this AI machine learning helps us automate the entire process. So it's basically seamless, and with the procedures we have, takes the least amount of time and this stress, so that you can, from the inception of the customer to his transaction to reporting to the regulator, it can be done in one straight line with less hassles.
Thank you so much for that response. So when we come to striking a balance between complying with regulations and maintaining operational efficiency, how would you say for you, Ikenna, how would you say you've been able to accomplish that?
Okay, I think, as I said it earlier, I mean, compliance has changed from being the police officer to now a business partner. First thing is what we've done is basically to integrate the compliance business partner into each product, right? So you're not treating compliance like an outsider, it is part of the entire procedure, right? So when a new regulation comes, the compliance officer has to sit in with you, ensure that all the requirements, regulatory requirements are outlined, are identified, basically. And then we put in place structures to make sure that we comply. And where we are not able to comply, at least we identify it and now be able to manage the risk when we do not do that. So first of all, is having the business compliance officer that will basically be the one to say, okay, we're on the same boat. Compliance is not here to be stop business, but to guide you in such a way that when you have achieved your objective, you don't look back and probably have fines and breaches and sanctions following you that you have to now probably give explanations to your investors or to your shareholders, right? So compliance is meant to make you get there efficiently without having to pay any fines. Secondly, what we've done to basically balance it out is also leveraging on technology. I mean, it's been quite important for us to use automated compliance solutions to handle probably repetitive tasks that we have in helping the business achieve its objectives. We've also tried to, because there are not enough resources, we always try to use the risk-based approach, prioritize where you have the risk. You have to prioritize, adopt a risk-based approach to compliance, focusing on resource areas and highest risk impact. That's where we try to put our focus. So we are not just looking at the low ball, we are trying to see where we're most going to have impact. So we have to do that as well. Then continuous training, letting them know compliance is your friend, and basically doing regular feedbacks and audits from the business to be sure that your advice is having much impact. And also, I mean, we're taking feedback from the team on how they can also help you achieving your compliance needs. So I think these are some of the few things that we do in Moneypoint.
Thank you so much for that response. Christine, as a consultant, how would you support compliance officers, people like Ikenna, for instance, in achieving that balance between regulatory compliance and operational efficiency? I know you had spoken about, the infrastructure that you can provide support in building, but in what other areas can you support compliance officers achieve that balance?
The other way we can be able to support compliance officers is being the one-stop shop for their compliance needs. If an organization is too big and they have several branches, or even further to that, they've expanded internationally, and they have compliance officers in different branches, it could be very decentralized even to get that information in one place. So we could be on this side and be able to support you and be the one-stop shop for your compliance needs. So for wherever you're based, so you have, no matter how many branches you have, no matter how many countries you are located in, we can be that partner who can support you comply, or rather be support you with compliance needs. So that means all that you need in terms of your in your organizations, for your customers, for your staff, whatever it is that you need, we can act as that support. That would be very key, especially for companies that are growing and they are increasingly finding it that it's becoming very expensive to establish at every point a compliance office or hire compliance.
Another question. In your role as a consultant, what are those common mistakes that you have seen organizations make in their efforts to ensure compliance and also mitigate those cyber threats or cyber risks, if you will, that they encounter in their daily operations?
I think the major mistake that maybe I have seen is that they are not aware of the current trends and they're not aware of the regulatory expectations or the laws. So maybe the employees are not aware of how I'm supposed to comply. A new employee has come and probably they have not been taken through the training or they don't have the proper knowledge. There are some industries or companies that have refused to leverage or progress, use technology. They're stuck in their old ways. They're still using the manual processes. So that means it becomes very tedious to first of all even trace that data, because when you're doing the manual process, the risk of that is that data could get lost. And we've had experiences of that. So that means when you want to retrieve that data, when you want to, for example, onboard a client, you probably might not be able to, or it takes years or months to be able to trace that data, which is of course inconveniencing for a client or for whoever it is that is at your doorstep trying to get your service.
Thank you so much for that response. And how about you, Ikenna? Your role as a compliance officer, what are those common mistakes that you have experienced, especially with respect to ensuring that your cyber risks are put at a minimum or low risk level?
First one in that case is the inadequate risk assessment, basically. So companies must ensure that they do frequent tests, vulnerability assessments, to make sure that every identified avenue where they could be easily infiltrated from is actually reviewed and properly covered. And not just doing these reviews, but making sure that they are using the most recent or updated form of technologies to do it. Because you may see some people that say, no, I have this kind of probably malware or kind of hardware to just stop some kind of vulnerabilities within your computer. However, if you are not aware that so much has gone forward and more technologies have come up that can easily penetrate that malware or whatever you have, that firewall you have operating, then you will not, you think you're fine until you've done this test, and not just with your old assessment, but new or newer technologies to try and test your system to find out that you're actually strong enough to withstand any kind of infiltration, right? And as Christian said, employee training is very important. That you keep your employees. You have to have something like, Cyber Week, to actually inform these guys that, look, everyone on the floor, please, simple things like do not give your password, check your keyboard for any kind of flash drive that is put into it you're not sure of, beware of phishing. All those kind of employee training is very, very important, because there are some kind of controls you may have that even in as much as you have protected yourself, it could come from the vulnerability of a staff, right? So even if you have all the software, staff may involuntarily still override some way, somehow. So it's important to advise your staff and train them. And then also poor data management. Sometimes some companies don't actually know where to keep or put proper adequate security or protection over some important data that they have. So they leave it to 1-2 step, or do not give it proper security, so that it cannot be easily accessed. They should give it like access control should be something that is very vital, that is only given to senior management, and they should particularly know the kind of information they have under minimum security and high security, right? Sometimes the data management practices allow these companies to be easily infiltrated. And then again, we have having this issue of being more reactive. It's only when it happens that it now starts scrambling. We have that practice. I think it's general. It's more. I think it's cultural. That's only when it happens we actually start running about to try and cover up our tracks, right? You have to have that proactive mentality, right? Doing this test on your own, even before the regulators come, even before an incident, right? And when you do this, you also identify it, and not just identify the kind of if you identify you have such vulnerabilities, it's important that you now actually inform the management and the board where necessary to make sure those things are actually mitigated before they crystallize, right? And then by the time you find out you have this kind of vulnerabilities, you must have a very effective incident report plan. So in as much as you're prepared, in as much as you've done your vulnerability test, as I said, these fraudsters, most of the time, they are always ahead of us, or not always, but sometimes they are ahead of us, and sometimes they're able to infiltrate. So you must also have the business continuity plan and disaster recovery plan to make sure when these things happen, you're able to continue functioning. So I think these are some of the key things I can add to that.
Now, we've spoken a lot about compliance responsibilities, regulatory compliance, cybersecurity awareness. But one area we haven't touched is how can our processes, how can our compliance frameworks be agile enough to respond very quickly to new risks? And just like you rightly said, Ikenna, the risks as they were a year or two ago are not what they are now. And we find ourselves in some instances trying to play catch up. But how do we ensure that our compliance frameworks continue to remain agile enough to respond to new risks as they emerge?
Thanks, Chidinma. I think the key thing for us, for cyber threats is as well leveraging technology. That is very key. For us, we have automated our compliance tools. We use automated compliance solutions to streamline our monitoring, reporting, and also our auditing process. So this basically allows us for quicker and better adjustments to any compliance requirements that may change due to regulatory landscape, right? So doing the leveraging on technology also means that we do a lot of data analytics. This allows us to employ data analytics and AI to detect any anomalies. So basically, what the AI helps us to do, and the enhanced technology, is to be able to detect any kind of anomalies or potential threats in real time, and possibly be ready for any kind of responses that we give. Right. So once we have it technology-wise, we're able to easily adapt, whether it's through our monitoring tool. Once we just get sense of the new kind of trends happening, we can easily go back and just adjust our monitoring tool to adopt to catch this kind of red flags when they come through. I think another one is also using the risk-based approach, because we can't catch everything, right? To be agile enough, we have to regularly use the risk-based to identify emerging threats and basically try to catch them before they happen. But they can happen, but it's just always have that proactive mindset that when it does happen, we're able to react fast enough. And this can only happen if we stay informed of regulatory changes. And as I mentioned, not just regulatory changes within Nigeria, within Africa. As I said earlier, most of these fraud things have been happening across Europe and Asia, and the America as well. And some of them have now started infiltrating into Africa and Nigeria. And now, because we play in that digital space, we are now being exposed to such attacks. So basically, keeping abreast of all changes as well that happen outside Nigeria is very, very important. And also our regulatory bodies. We have people like the FATF, also regional regulatory body, giving us new information on the kind of frauds that happen across our region. These are the kind of people, institutions we have to tap from to understand the kind of trends also happening and trying to localize it to us and also be ready for it. And as I said earlier, regular audits and assessments. This is one of the ways that you can be able to be agile enough. If you do frequent internal audits, you'll be able to find out your basic vulnerabilities and they can also now start assigning probable resources to make sure that when these kind of attacks happen, you'll be better prepared to tackle them. Thanks.
So among the things that we do or we do is that in our infrastructure, we pride ourselves, like I said, we continue keeping our technology updated. And among the ways that we'll be able to support is that we'll be able to provide enhanced information sharing. That means the information that we are sharing is real-time information. So that means when you go, for example, and do business search or an identity search, that information that your customer receives is real-time information. And the time between onboarding that client and even giving them the service that they require is reduced. The other thing that we'll be able to do is that we will be able to provide, in addition, like I said, training. To an extent, we can be able to give your advisory information to your staff and employees based on the current trends that we have and the regulatory laws that exist, not only, of course, in Kenya, but in Nigeria and in Africa, because we are able to keep ourselves informed with that information and be able to support and provide that information to your employees so that they can be able to support your customers as well.
What would you say are some key indicators that a company is at risk of non-compliance? In your experience as a consultant, what would you say are some key indicators that a company is at risk of non-compliance or a potential security?
A lot of them, but I just maybe mentioned that three or four. Top of the list would be updated security policies. So you'd find maybe in an organization where they lack policies updates, or rather they are not informed about the security policies that exist within the country, within the borders, or within internationally. So if a company does not have that update, or they don't have that kind of knowledge, then of course that points to a company that it's at risk in terms of regulatory compliance. The other thing is, of course, weak access controls, where the company has not delegated maybe specific people to be able to have specific access. So that means we've not locked certain accesses to maybe managers or authorized staff in your organization. That means anyone can access that information. It's very important to make sure that you have delegated people in your staff or in your company that are able to safeguard this information. So a company that has not given privileges or has not given rights to specific people would be at risk. But more so, giving excessive privileges, of course. Say, for example, in an organization, you only have one person who can access a certain aspect or something in the organization. Maybe in IT, it's only one person who has access to that. It's very risky, because what if that person, for example, is not available, or God forbid the person, what happens? Or, for example, they don't have the interest of the company. They would collaborate with an outsider, for example, to even cause harm or data breach in your company. I think the other one that I've mentioned is if you see maybe a company that has a very high turnover in the IT, because the IT personnel are very, and especially the ones who are very critical, the top management in the IT sector. If you see a very high turnover there, I think that's a problem, because the kind of data that they are dealing with, because they're interacting with data from individuals, and that data, of course, gets into exposure, and it's at risk because very many people are accessing that data and they are exiting the organization. The last one that I'd like maybe to mention is third-party vulnerabilities, where if you're engaging a vendor, or in the case of a data partner, and they're not compliant, then of course by that extension you also you're not compliant, because if the party you're engaging to get your data or the data partner that you have engaged or you're working with is not compliant, or does not meet the threshold, or is not meeting the regulatory standards, then of course by that extension you are exposed. So that means for the compliance department, they need to be very strict when they are vetting their data partners, their vendors, and their sources, so that they are not by extension exposed.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that response. For our attendees, if you have any questions, you'd like to be part of the conversation, please drop your comments. We're coming to the end of the session, and so that we can take your questions right after the session. So please feel free to drop your comments, drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we would address all of your questions once we receive them. Now, for my final question to you, Ikenna, looking ahead, what are those trends you foresee in the regulatory space and also in the cyber space that businesses in the financial sector should prepare themselves for?
I think it's already happening, but just saying, looking ahead, I mean, for instance, earlier this year, we had two audits by the CBN. One was from the Office of the Other Financial Institutions. It was an RBS, Review-Based Supervisory Examination, as well as one from the Payment Systems Department. One was really auditing us for our financing. The other was actually auditing our IT infrastructure. So basically, the trend we're going to see, first of all, is to improve regulatory scrutiny. We are going to be having them more often because the amount of cyber attacks we're having, so the regulators are going to be coming in more often. And they're not just going to be looking at our finances, our corporate governance, they're going to be looking deep into our IT systems to make sure they have the proper policies, we have the proper infrastructure, we have the proper people to make sure that customers' data and whatever information that we have that's susceptible to the bad actors are not easily accessed, right? And also that we manage it in such a way that it is also easily accessible to us, but not accessible to the bad actors. So increased regulatory scrutiny is going to be something that it's going to be very important for us. So it's important that we're always prepared, we stay informed, and we actually have that proactive compliance culture to make sure that we are aware of what's going to come within that cybersecurity space, within the cyber space, and we're able to act accordingly, right? Another thing is what I foresee happening is having more regulations in cybersecurity. As I said, sometime in May this year, they released the RBS cybersecurity for the payment systems department. So we are going to be seeing definitely more regulations covering cybersecurity. We are going to be seeing more requirements, for instance, for having the IT security committee, having more resilience checks happening within our systems, and having it, not just having it independently, but having to probably make reports to regulators or having third parties access us independently. So that's something that's going to continue growing. And also, definitely what's going to happen is adoption of advanced technology. I mean, most of these banks now, if you notice, most of the, I think, Access Bank have created their own Stanbic. They now have their fintechs. They are going from the traditional bankings, and they are now opening fintechs to adopt it and leverage on the new technologies. That is where I see us going. Everyone is going to go into the digital space. One for security, two for speed, and also to attract the recent kind of upcoming customers. The stress of actually going to a bank is actually reduced. So adopting of those technologies that can easily and quickly allow you to onboard and maintain customers, give them speed and quality service, it's very important. And also, we now see other financial institutions investing heavily in technology, using data analytics to probably know the kind of products or service to give each individual. People are going to be using this kind of information and analytics to give better products and not just generalize on the kind of products they are going to be giving the customers. So not every customer just wants a normal savings. They're going to be having to adopt it to sectors by using data and not throwing out the product and hoping that people will adopt to it. But because you have used data within your organization to actually understand the kind of needs your customer has or your customers have by monitoring their transactions, be able to give a product that will better serve them and will be easily acceptable. And then again, I see a collaboration within this industry is going to be very key. This is something that the NEED has always tried to do. They have brought us, the NEED projects have brought us together to try and also collaborate and do some form of information sharing to quickly capture the barriers. Because what we've noticed most of the time is once the funds come in, they try to launder it among the fintechs, right? But once we have this collaboration with the NEED and with the projects, we're able to easily nib it in the board and able to identify them and block it before it goes to 3 or 4. The issue we always have is once it comes in, before you try to trap it, it jumps to the other. But by the time we have that better and seamless collaboration, we're able to quickly report the needs, hold the funds, and quickly act fast enough to capture the individual, or at least hold the funds and repatriate it to whoever we need to, whoever is the victim of it. And then also incident response, this will also help your incident response readiness. By the time we have this collaboration, information sharing, I think generally the entire ecosystem of compliance, fraud, and all that will better benefit from all this. Thanks.
I mean, Ikenna has mentioned, if not all, majority of them, because the ones that I was thinking of, like data analytics, because we are a data infrastructure company, like I said, and we are very focused and very interested in making sure that the data we collect is accurate, and also leveraging this data, because we know data is the new oil, and it's the future basically. So the future is leveraging the data that you have, first of all, to use it to learn your customers, because back up that data. I think the one thing that probably I would say is probably have the technology or the infrastructure to back up the data that you have, because backing up that data is the starting point for you to be able to use that data for so many purposes, including what Ikenna has said, data analytics, and using AI to learn the needs of your customers, the expectations of your customer. You can do so much with that data. So I think for me, that's the number one thing. Like, leverage the data, back up the data, because the data is the new future, the future is with that. Okay.
Thank you so much. I think for me, the one area or trend that I am actually looking forward to is that collaboration among the financial institutions, where they're all able to step away from the banker-customer relationship and share information amongst themselves to help forestall against cyber, this increase in cyber fraud. Because I'm sure, if not all of us on this call have been a victim at one point in time or the other of, fraud situations, and have lost hard-earned money to, all these nefarious actors. So that is something for me. I am looking forward to that seamless collaboration and, seeing financial institutions work as a team to fight against cyber crimes and cyber fraud. So thank you all so much. This has been a very insightful session. I was hoping to get a question or two from our attendees, but I believe that the conversations that we've been having have been very clear to them, and they are able to take away a thing or two from all that has been discussed here. Thank you so much, Ikenna, for bringing in your wealth of experience to bear on this conversation. Thank you also, Christine, for letting us into, that consulting perspective and how you can support us. I think someone has his hand raised. I think there's someone. John Nwachukwu has his hand raised. John, do you want to go ahead and speak? You can just unmute and speak.
All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. It has been an interesting one. Yes, we talk about the tech part of it, data analytics, and the cyber security part of it, what we need to do. But there is one of these challenges that I think is one thing that is worrisome, and we have to look into it and see how we can, solve that issue. We have the area of knowledge gap. The Japa syndrome is affecting a lot of sectors today. People are living with knowledge gap. What are we doing in order to manage this knowledge gap so that we always have the hands that will help us in managing this situation, especially the managing the cybersecurity aspect of it? What are we doing about that?
In the case for us, from Money Point, I think one of the key things we try to do for all our staff within the compliance department is, first of all, for you to take the Compliance Institute of Nigeria's designated compliance professional examination. That's the first line for you to, and it's paid for by the company for all the compliance. I think we've got 80% of our staff compliance team now have completed it. I think the next set of people who recently joined us will be taking it in January. So that's the first step, because we as compliance, what they expect, or what the business expects most times, is that we know it all. And it's not the truth, but it's just to be that a compliance person, you're expected to know which regulation. So you will be the one to train these people sometimes, or to guide them, or to give advice. And you cannot give advice if you don't actually understand or know what you're giving advice on. So it's important for us to first train the compliance function, make sure they are capable. So that training is important, and I know for a fact that also getting the right compliance people, the right experience, is actually difficult in Nigeria right now. I've been also trying to recruit some people from Mwaura now, so I know it's difficult. The required knowledge in compliance is something that is currently scarce in Nigeria. So I hear you, but I think we have to start from the basics. We have to start by letting them at least pass the examination of the compliance. Then it's from interactions and with these regulations, like the cybersecurity. So it's something, it's like the new cybersecurity framework that was released by the CGN. It's by the time you have these competent staff who are trained in compliance, and you begin to have these interactions with the regulators. By the time you know the requirements, then what is on me right now is to also now bring in third-party professionals who actually are well-versed in cybersecurity to come and also train us. So we are going to, first of all, get ourselves prepared, train ourselves, train our people, collaborate with the regulator to find out what the regulation in our local area is, then bring in a third party to come and give us more advice, and that's the best way to do it. So it's going to be a process, but we have to, first of all, get ourselves prepared, and that's the first thing, get everybody ready, at least at a certain level, to be sure that you're professional in compliance, understand the regulation, then they can bring someone to either do the training for it to pass to the rest of the organization, from the board level to the senior management down to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ikenna, for that. Christine, you have anything to add from a consulting perspective?
No, I think for now, I don't have anything to add, but maybe just to clarify from John, did he mean the knowledge gap for employees or for the masses? Because those could be two different things. Like for the a common Nigerian or a common Kenyan, is it what he was referring to, or is he referring to the knowledge gap for staff?
There is one question in the Q&A box, and the question is directed to you, Ikenna. And it says, kindly talk more about the training and certification, please.
Okay. We currently have the Compliance Institute of Nigeria. I think they have examinations for compliance officers or people that want to get into the compliance space every quarter. I think the next one is meant to be in January. I can share the link. I can find the link and share it here for anyone interested. They will give you more details on it. It's basically an examination to bring you into compliance, actually basic compliance, get your compliance knowledge, and from the kind of documents, books, and information that they'll be giving to you, you'll be able to build your compliance knowledge. It's not like it is not something that is just trying to let you pass the exam, but by the time you read through all the kind of documents that we provided to you, you get a sense of what compliance is, because we have some people coming in from internal controls, some people coming in from risk, right? it's the same like an assurance function, but you have to come from a compliance angle, right? Internal control have the way, the perspective when they see an operation, same as risk. But this also guides you to look at things from a compliance angle, how you understand regulation, how you interpret it, and how you're meant to advise. So all the information that we provided for you will help you and guide you. So some people will have them coming from internal control and they want to transition to compliance. So taking that exam actually gives you those basics. So I can drop the link to the CIN website so that possibly by the time you go there, you can go and register yourself and have the examination. I think it's sometime next year. I think the last one that was taken was about 2 weeks ago. But it's something I can advise you. Read it up, even just for the knowledge. You don't want to just take the exam, but try and get the information, know all about compliance. Whether you're trying to be a compliance officer or not, it's just knowledge to be added to you. So I can drop the link here and you'll probably take the examination. And I'm sure that when you get on the website, they can provide more information and requirements for you.
Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you all so much for your contributions, letting us know that, what we're doing here is very meaningful. Thank you, Ikenna, once again for bringing your wealth of experience to bear here. And thank you for your time as well, because I know that you are a busy executive, like I had said earlier, but you took time to be on this platform to share your experiences with us. And thank you, Christine, also for being here and for sharing your experience with us, and also sharing how you can support compliance officers achieve their objective, which is ensuring that their organizations continue to remain compliant with regulatory requirements. So I will hand the mic over to Anthony so that he can give any final words that he has. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Chidinma, for moderating this session. Thank you so much. Thank you to Ikenna and Christine. You already said thank you to them. Thank you for everyone who joined and stayed to the end. And thank you to the organizers, Premly and Africa Tech Radio. Thank you so much. We will continue these sessions in 2025 because it's like the last quarterly Premly compliance event for this year, 2024. We would take your feedback from speakers, from participants from the beginning of the year till now, and we would also find ways to improve this compliance event to ensure that it suits everyone, those in industry and those who work from outside the industry. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful weekend wherever you are. And for those whose weekend starts like on a Thursday, thank you.